Yeah. First of all, thank all of you for coming, and thanks, Eric, for the invitation. I want to say real quick, I love everybody's wines up here. I've been inspired by them, and I enjoy them, and it's a real honor to be with you guys, so thank you. I might not be as well known as some of these names, so I'm going to be kind of brief. You already got a lot of information about Oregon, so I don't really need to go into a lot of the details about geology and climate and all that stuff because we heard it so well done already, and I don't know all that information anyway, so know some of it. So I started making wine in Napa Valley. Ultimately, I became winemaker and general manager of Bryant Family Vineyard, and I left there in 2014, and I moved north to work with a winery called Force Majeure, and started a state program, built a winery, all that kind of stuff. But something that drew me to the Pacific Northwest was Oregon and Willamette Valley. I'd always loved the wines coming out of there, and been really, I knew I wanted to do something focused in that region. And I had never worked with Pinot when I lived in California. So I knew if I was going to work with that fruit, I was just going to have to start my own thing. So that's where Holocene Wines kind of was born. So I'm not in the Willamette physically. I'm in the Walla Walla Valley. I work with a handful of growers in the Willamette. I bring the fruit over to Walla Walla and make the wine at the Force Majeure winery. I started Holocene in 2015 with just one wine, the Memorialis Pinot Noir that you're having now. We're having the 17, but I only started with the 15 vintage, which was a difficult vintage to start with because it was really hot. 14 and 15 were extremely hot. 16 was hot. 17 was the beginning of like a more quote unquote classic vintage for the Willamette. I think Josh, maybe you at one point said it was like the best vintage since 2010 or something like that. So just more kind of a return to form for Oregon. So that's why I chose this wine. It was kind of the first couple of years for me being a little bit removed from the vineyards and having to rely on other people. I thought maybe the fruit was a little bit too ripe, so I kind of scaled back when I pick, and I started incorporating a lot more whole cluster. And now I pretty much do all whole cluster on my Pinot. Make a little bit of Chardonnay too, but up until actually the 2020 vintage, I tried to get more fruit. I was going to get some fruit from Lingua Franca actually, and then the fires happened, so that didn't happen that year. And with the 21 vintage, 22 vintage, I expanded Holocene. But anyway, this wine, it comes from a west-facing hillside in the Yamhill Carlton AVA. It's the ancient uplifted seabeds, marine sedimentary soils. There's a handful of different clones in this wine, mutations of Pinot Noir. It's about 75% whole cluster, 14 months in barrel, and mostly neutral oak, a little bit of new oak. Another thing is the way I make wine. This goes back to, you've been at Bryant Family, a lot of native yeast fermentation, natural malolactic fermentation, no fining, no filtration, nothing like that. So kind of like just trying to let the varietals express themselves through the lens of whole cluster, which brings freshness, which brings energy, tension to the wines, and trying to keep the alcohols in check. And yeah, I think that's good.
Beautiful.
So thank you.
Thank you, Todd.